Welcome to Top Tier Outlook, and what we're going to do today is maybe a little different than what I normally do when we do the show. So one of the things that I would love to give you all insight into, and this is what I'm going to do here live with you all, is imagine you're in the office with me and we're going through the charts of the broader averages and those heavily weighted sectors, looking for symbols that have the best probability for movement. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I continue to focus on is the long side of the market. It's where the bulk of the positions in terms of alerts that we've been putting on in the Sector Secrets Mastery have been working. Everything from Kroger to long positions in gold to long positions in Walmart. For the most part, those long calls have been working. One thing we do have puts in is crude oil. So we do have USO puts, but for the most part, when I look back on what worked in April and what's starting to look pretty good in May, it's the long side. So let me walk you through a scan of how I would find symbols that I would focus on the long side in. Now, this layout that I'm showing you, there's two versions of this layout. This layout is just a flexible grid in the Thinkorswim platform, but we structure it in a very specific way. We put in the upper left-hand corner, we put the index or the ETF that we're focusing on there. And this is very much unique to what we do in the mastery. And you might have seen this layout before. Same thing. I use this. This is actually a layout that we give to members so that they can look and do the same kind of scanning as I'm doing with you all in this video. So the first thing we're going to do is ask ourselves, are there any trends? And these labels that are here in the upper left-hand corner make it really easy to identify where there's bullish momentum, which I don't focus on a lot, but I know that if the momentum is bullish, then, and if it continues, then eventually the trend will be bullish too. If I have bullish momentum but no trend, the next thing I'm going to look for is, do I have at least 5 green candles in a row and on the right edge? So this would not be an example. Apple, because of this yellow candle right there, is not 5 green in a row at the right edge. Berkshire is. Tesla is. Let's see here. AVGO, Broadcom is. So these would be examples of symbols. And by the way, the SPY also is. So these would be examples. If I'm making a list of those symbols that I want to keep an eye on to the long side, it would be SPY, Apple, it would be Berkshire. It'll be interesting to see what Berkshire does, since Warren Buffett has stated something we all know is coming and finally made it official, which is he's stepping down at the end of the year. So that's going to be interesting to see what Berkshire does on the open. But right now, what I know based on these daily time frames is those are the symbols that are moving higher. Now let's go to the king of the sectors, and that's XLK. A reason I call this king of the sectors is because the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P have XLK, the technology ETF, weighted heavily. For the Dow, it's number 2. For the S&P and the NASDAQ, it's the number 1 weighted sector. So I'm going to go through the same process. Is the XLK in an uptrend? You'll notice nothing here is except for PLTR. And one of the things that I wanted to let you all know, especially for those of you that are fans of the daily price movement range, and I think we're doing it for the hourly as well, Broadcom, so AVGO, CRWD, RDDT, MNST, HOOD, CR, and PLTR, we are going to have daily price movement ranges, and I believe hourly price movement ranges for. So when I want to trade PLTR, which would absolutely be on the bullish list, as would MSFT and INTU, right? So these are the symbols where I have, well, no trend, right? But there is at least the 5 green, at least 5 in a row on the right edge, right? So there's your Microsoft, there's your XLK. And this is where the watch list is built, focusing on probabilities. Now, what does that mean? Nobody knows what happens next. Buying support or resistance doesn't guarantee a bounce or follow through. But if it happens in the kind of environment where there has been follow through, the probability of continuation is far, far higher. So following along here, are there any trends in the group within the Dow? No, but if I look at least a 5 green, I can see Goldman. Once again, Microsoft, we already have that covered from the XLK. What else will end up on this list? American Express. And then you can see down there, I've got 4 green candles in a row. 4 is not 5. So CRM has a little bit more to prove before I put it on the list. And again, this layout that you're looking at, you can make this up with any set of tools that you like. Again, the layout and the structure, meaning we've got these in the order of weighting. So we're looking at a relative performance scan, and that's what makes the process unique. Most folks don't use a relative performance scan, right? What they're usually doing is using a scan that has a number of indicators, and if that stock or ETF or futures contract meets the criteria set forth by the indicator settings, then the scanner will say, okay, this particular chart has, let's use an example of something that I'm teaching you all how to trade the way that I do it, with squeeze, right? I can scan the entire universe of stocks for a squeeze, which is cool. But I would take one extra step. I would look for every one of the symbols that are weighted in the same sector or index, and then compare the quality of the trend. And then you can add another criteria, compare the quality of the squeeze. So for example, the first go round is XLF. And by the way, are there any trends here? Once again, no. But I know XLF has 5 green candles. We've already covered Berkshire. I know JP Morgan has the 5. We can see MasterCard, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. We already talked about Goldman when we looked at the Dow. What else? We already talked about American Express. You can see Citi there. And this is not all the names weighted in the XLF, but these are the top weighted names. These are the names that have the most weighting and therefore the most influence on this sector, in this case, the financials sector. And the financials has the green as well. So you see, I'm just finding Visa's almost there. 4 is not 5. MasterCard is. Bank of America, Wells, Citi, American Express, there's Goldman. So lacking a trend, and you'll notice every one of these is a bullish momentum, but neutral trend. All right, the next best thing is, do I have those 5 green candles in a row? And that's where I'll look for the buy the dip, the buy the support, maybe focusing on Darvis, maybe focusing on the Darvis plus the squeeze, what I like to call that pre-momentum, pre-breakout trade. And I'm going through those sectors that are heavily weighted in the broader averages. So another heavily weighted sector is XLY. This is consumer discretionary, and this is quite heavily weighted in the NASDAQ. So you'll see here, there's a standout. You'll see there TJX is a trend. After that, not much, right? So if I don't have a trend, but I have bullish momentum, you'll see here that Tesla has the 5 green candles. Booking has the 5 green. CMG, you'll see down there, 5 green. O'Reilly's pretty close, but not quite yet. And so those would be the symbols, and XLY itself. Now, please remember, this does not mean that all these stocks are going to have sufficient liquidity to trade. So when I'm looking at XLY and I look at the option chain for May 16, I want to make sure, and this is really important. So one of the things I tell my members is, look, we in the Sector Secrets Mastery, it's one of the biggest masteries here at Simpler, right? We have a lot of members. And if I were to send us into, for example, buying the 198 calls on XLY, when hypothetically, again, for example, it were to dive into this 198 area, there's 115 open interest. What would happen if I sent out an alert? Look, I'm usually looking to build a position depending on the cost of the option of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 contracts, right? There's no way I'm going to be able to go into XLY, put in a bid for 20 or 30 contracts or 10 and not increase the bid on myself. And then if all hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of us end up doing the same thing, one of the things I try to keep in mind is whether it's the mastery or just in general, the broader markets, I don't want to go into a low open interest strike. The spreads are usually wider. Getting in might be simple. Getting out, maybe not so much. It's easy to move the bid in a very illiquid strike. And I don't want to put myself or anyone who's learning how to trade, still making their own trading decisions, of course, but learning how to trade, entering an illiquid strike. That to me is risk, and risk is not something that I want to take in terms of something that I can avoid. Look, all trading is risk. We always have the fear, the possibility of getting stopped out. But why take on unnecessary risk, right? And that to me is unnecessary risk. So here's the S&P. Does much look good in the S&P? All right, we looked at this one. I'm going to go through the same process. And please remember, keep in mind earnings. Most of you know I detest earnings season because we end up with a lot of, frankly, nonsense like this, where, oh, it's looking bullish, and then here comes earnings, and it's not. So 5 in a row is great, but going into earnings, no way. And then I've got to wait for the post-earnings reaction to kind of yield, to reorganize into 5 green candles again. 2 is not enough. I need 3 more. And so there's got to be some reason anything gets left off the list. As traders, sometimes we're far too eager to just put everything on the list. All right, the more the merrier, right? Actually, the better I'm trading, the more I'm being discerning, the more I'm saying, nope, that doesn't meet the requirement. And nope, that's not good enough. And those are things, I'm always looking for a reason not to take the trade, not to take the trade. I'm looking for the stock to move with the sector and the sector to move with the index. I'm looking for that alignment. And if XLC has 5 green candles, I'm not interested in trading things that are weak. Right? I'm not going to be interested in TMUS. I'm not going to be interested in CMCA. I'm going to want to put on swing trades in things that are looking more like XLC, at least for, like for like, daily time frame to daily time frame. Okay, I mentioned that because we actually have a really nice long position in TMUS based on the weekly time frame for our longer term position trading portfolio in the Sector Secrets Mastery, but that has nothing to do with the time frame of the daily for a swing. So you'll see Live Nation, Netflix. Just be aware of that earnings reality we have to deal with, and just avoid those symbols that are cruising right into earnings. All right, so you can see this is really at the heart of what I do. This is really what we do to scan for opportunities in the Sector Secrets Mastery, which, again, I emphasize that because, again, most traders are very good. They've mastered scanning. They've mastered the process of using a technical criteria to choose what they want to trade. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what I want to do is I want to compare like with like in the same group. So if I were a trend follower, maybe I'd prioritize, which I am, Walmart and Philip Morris. If it's then just strength, then Kroger. So these are the best two. And by the way, we have an open position in Walmart. We have an open position in Kroger. And the reason is 5 green, but no trend. And here I have the trend. Okay, awesome. Now, would I want to trade Procter & Gamble to the long side? Not if I'm generally seeing some strength on the daily time frame of the XLP itself, right? So it's really important that you can say, well, Coke looks pretty good, and it does, no question about it, but does it look as good as, say, Kroger or Walmart? No. And that's where, for a lot of traders, they look at pretty good. They look at things that, well, it could be tradable. Yeah, it could be. Or it could go absolutely nowhere. Let's take a look at transports. Now we'll take a look at a high concentration weighted sector in the Dow. One of the symbols that absolutely has my attention, and probably the only symbol to the upside that has my attention. Remember, I'm really focusing on a bullish watch list for this video. All right, take a look. There's Uber. Now, if I did want to put together a bearish watch list, it's really simple. It would have to be, and this is probably not out of the realm of reality here, it would be because the Dow is weak and transports are weak, and then I would focus on UNP and UPS and I guess that's it, actually, UMP and UPS. But since there's been a natural drift to the upside in the broader averages, this is why I am looking to the long side. All right, let's also take a look at, I do want to take a look at industrials with everybody. So let's go take a look at the XLI. A couple symbols from this group I really like. XLI itself. Please be aware, we may not have the open interest, so I'll need a stock proxy in its place. So let's say XLI doesn't have liquidity when I want to buy a call, but GE looks pretty good. It looks very similar. That would be on the list. We already talked about Uber from IYT. Anything else on the list? Yeah, Boeing's actually on the list, right? So we're going to keep an eye on that. ETN, I don't know the liquidity on that one at the open interest. And then LMT. But I'm just putting that list together of stocks that have a higher probability of potentially moving higher. Let's go take a look at XLV, healthcare. All right, what do I like here? Not much, not much. Yeah, not much. If I want to be long here, what can I be long? No trends, maybe BSX. That might be as good as it gets. And maybe ISRG, it's a spendy stock. I typically don't trade super spendy stocks. Not much is going to qualify here. All right, what about utilities? A lot of folks have been interested in utilities. Is there a defensive benefit to looking at a sector that could have a lot more resilience when there's fear? Well, XLU looks good. Are there any trends here? No, but XLU, DUK, CEG, AEP, all right, EXC. There's a lot here. SRE, again, we'll have to check the open interest, and VST. Again, these are not the kind of symbols that everyone's going to be talking about and looking at, right? So notice that the kind of symbols that I'm sharing with you here are not the ones, everyone wants to trade Tesla, and maybe they want to trade Monster and MicroStrategy, and that's all fine. That's sort of headline driven, attention driven. This kind of list is going to seem very unusual unless those headlines are overlapping a relative performance scan. That's why, a lot of traders, when they come into the master, they say, wow, Rag, we're not really looking at where other traders are looking. When people look at PBJ, they might look at Monster. And I agree, Monster would be one of them, but where else can you look? Well, take a look. I don't know what NGVC has. I think that's Natural Grocers has for open interest, or Sprouts, SFM for that matter, but I'm willing to look. Dash needs another green candle. CTVA is ready for prime time. Like I mentioned, we've got Kroger long in the mastery, and I would look for Sprouts, etc. What don't I want to trade? I don't really want to focus a lot on Coke. That one yellow candle, unfortunately, undoes a lot. That might be a maybe, but this is a definite no. Keurig's a definite no. Com's a definite no, right? I mean, SYY, Cisco, definite no. General Mills, heck no, right? So this is how we go through it. And if you can use this process to your advantage, you're going to be trading sector secret style. You're going to be trading things that have the highest probability of follow through, and you're not just obsessed with what everyone else is looking at, which is what, unfortunately, most traders do. All right, so that's the process. I thought I'd really let you in to what we do in the room and how I put this list together. This is the bullish list. Then from here, we'll do the next set of scanning in the room where I start looking for specific setups. So basically, I've cast a net of, well, quite a few stocks. I've written all these down. So I've got actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16. Wow, quite a few. Okay. 24. So I've got almost 40 names here on my list, right? I've got 46 actually on my list. Are they all going to be trades? No. This 46 is probably going to turn into 10 by the time I look at open interest and things that actually have a setup. But this is the process, gang. Learn this. A lot of people do use this process that they've learned from me, whether they're in the mastery or not. So anytime you see a layout like this and a relative performance scan, believe me, that's index sector stock at work with a relative performance scan. It will give you a huge advantage, a massive edge when you're putting your watch list together. Hope this helped. Leave your comments below. Thanks as always for joining me, and I'll see you in the next update.